Good evening and welcome to Royal Victoria Regional Health Centre's very first live telephone town hall. Thank you for taking the time to join us tonight. My name is Suzanne Legui, RVH's Chief Communications Officer, and I'll be your moderator for tonight's discussion. And I'm joined tonight by RVH President and CEO Janice Scott, who is keen to answer your questions and get your feedback on the future of healthcare at RVH. And specifically, what does patient-centered care mean to you? What does care look like when we put patients and families first? So to ask a question tonight, all you have to do is simply dial *3 on your phone at any time, and your question will be put into the queue. We hope to get to as many questions as possible this evening. However, if we do run out of time, you'll be able to leave a message at the end of the broadcast, and we will get back to you. Again, dial *3 on your phone at any time to ask a question. This is your opportunity. We do want to hear from you. So last fall, RVH embarked on a strategic planning process, developing a roadmap that will guide us for the next several years. So before we get to our callers, Janice, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure, Suzanne, and good evening, and thanks to everyone who's called in online tonight. Despite the warm weather tonight and potentially a hockey game, we're truly fortunate to live in a region full of people who care so deeply about their hospital and, of course, the future of healthcare. This live session tonight offers another opportunity to have your voice heard. RVH last refreshed its strategic plan in 2007. It would be an understatement to say that a lot has happened since then. Our Phase 1 expansion, which we opened almost a year ago to the day, doubled the size of the hospital, adding 101 new beds, and, of course, the Simcoe Muskoka Regional Cancer Centre. We added new programs and services, and in fact, we've hired over 600 additional staff. So today, we're a very different organization, and of course, we need to plan and chart a new course for the next 5 to 7 years. The $450 million project allowed us to transform this hospital into a regional health service, and we're adding programs and services not found elsewhere in the region, such as additional interventional radiology suites for minimally invasive surgeries, the region's own cardiac care unit, respiratory unit, and of course, the Regional Cancer Center. And soon we will be completing 2 additional state-of-the-art operating rooms.
It's certainly been a lot that's happened in the past year, but we're not done yet, are we?
Oh, no, we're not done yet. No moss grows on RVH. So as we celebrate both the conclusion and, of course, the success of the expansion project, it is now time to look to the future and to determine what RVH's roles and priorities will be over the next several years. And so that's why I'm really excited to talk to people tonight.
What are some of the things that you want to hear from? What do you want to learn?
Well, the residents of Simcoe Muskoka have an incredible facility available to them. But what's next? How do we grow? How do we innovate? And what do we change? For example, how do we create partnerships with our patients and their families to really transform the patient experience? How can we take full advantage of the many opportunities that lie ahead while still delivering on our promise of high-quality, safe, patient-centered care? So I'm looking forward to hearing from callers tonight and having an open and frank discussion about what's important to the callers. How can we enhance the experience at Royal Victoria Regional Health Centre?
Well, I think we have a lot to learn from our callers tonight, and we do have a few already calling in. They're just speaking with our operators right now, and we'll get to them in a few moments. But a reminder, if you do have a question, at any time, press *3, and you will be connected with one of our operators. You know, Janice, this has been a remarkably inclusive process. You talked to so many people and asked an awful lot of questions.
Well, we certainly did. Thank you to the over 3,000 patients, family members, staff, physicians, health and academic partners, policymakers, and of course community members who care deeply about RVH, shared their ideas and experiences in a variety of ways. We had focus groups, one-on-one interviews, surveys online, by mail, and of course at the patient bedside. In fact, some people on the call tonight probably completed one of those surveys. And of course, the final element of our consultation is tonight's telephone town hall. We asked what you counted on RVH for, and we asked what are the strengths upon which we could build. We asked you to share your experiences and tell us how we can do even better. You know, today in our healthcare system, patients expect and families expect and deserve the highest level of care and services, no matter where you receive them. So we also did extensive research. We analyzed shifting demographics and utilization rates. We looked at future health trends and opportunities, recognizing regional and provincial government priorities. RVH's strategic plan has been shaped by the voices of thousands of people who care about the future of healthcare. We believe, Suzanne, that people spoke, we listened, and together we've dared to imagine the possible.
Well, we've certainly heard from many, many people, and we'll be hearing from them again tonight. We do have some callers on the line again. If you have a question, please press *3. Give us your thoughts. It's critically important that we hear from patients and families from our community about what is important to them. So at this point, we're going to go to the callers. We have Dale on the line. Dale is calling from Barrie, and she has a question about inpatient mental health. That's a key priority for us here at Royal Victoria Regional Health Centre, and we'll go to Dale now. Dale, you're live on the line with Janice.
Thanks, Suzanne. Hi, Janice. Currently, there are no inpatient mental health services available for children and young people in North Simcoe, Muskoka, and I know there's a need. What's RVH doing to address that need for service?
Thanks, Dale. It's a great question, and we're answering it. Barrie has one of the fastest-growing youth populations in Canada, and in fact, that population group is expected to grow by 19% between now and 2030. We also know that early investment in the mental health of our young residents can certainly reduce, one, the burden of illness, and also ensure that they're productive members of society, and, of course, therefore, improve the long-term health of our community. And you're right, currently there are no inpatient mental health services available to youth in North Simcoe, Muskoka. So often, unfortunately, children are referred to facilities throughout the Greater Toronto area, and if there are no beds available, then they are often admitted, and I must admit inappropriately, to either a pediatric inpatient unit or to an adult inpatient mental health unit. Neither, of course, are appropriate for our youth. Sometimes, though, and most alarming, I would say, children are often just sent home from emergency departments because there simply are no services available. We would all acknowledge and have heard from moms that there is a challenge and a frustration that's very significant for our families. So RVH is developing a child and youth inpatient unit for up to 9 beds. Now, you know, I think, through following provincial government politics, that actually our provincial government has indicated that mental health is one of its priorities, and they want fast access to high-quality services, as we mentioned earlier, early identification, and to really be able to support these vulnerable kids. And it's one of our top priorities, too. Our foundation has committed to raising funds in support of both an advanced cardiac program and the Child and Youth Inpatient Mental Health Unit, commonly known now as our Hearts and Mind campaign. So even though we're in the quiet phase of a new campaign, we know that these programs will be supported from our foundation. Equally important, our local health integration network have also endorsed that RVH be the location site and are really encouraging us to open the beds for youth with mental health diagnoses as soon as possible.
Thanks, Janice. Again, if you have a question, please press *3 at any time. We really do want to talk to you tonight, particularly about patient and family-centered care and how RVH can provide really the best patient experience possible. And just a reminder, of course, due to privacy considerations, we're unable to discuss personal details or provide any medical advice, of course, tonight. So again, we are listening. We want to hear from you. What's important to your health care? Janice, we talked to an awful lot of people about their care. What did they have to say? What's important to them when it comes to the care they receive at RVH?
Well, Suzanne, there were certainly some common themes. Basically, they want what we all want when we're injured or when we're ill. They told us they want access to services when they need them, and they don't want to wait an unreasonable amount of time. Everyone wants to receive information about their health, their care, prognosis. They want to be involved and engaged in every step of the way. Patients want their pain to be well controlled, and they want to get help with regaining physical strength, initially walking to the bathroom, getting out of bed, eating, and, of course, getting home to where they'd rather be. They certainly want to make sure that everyone's unique needs or preferences and goals are respected and certainly at the center of the care that we give. Ultimately, people want to be treated as an individual. People also told us that the healthcare system is confusing, it's difficult to navigate through. Everyone wants to have healthcare providers to work together, to have their care coordinated, so that the journey through the system is seamless and simplified, whether in transitions of care, in or hospital, back to community or to another resident. They certainly want to understand the plan that needs to be in place when they leave RVH.
So it sounds like patients and families are a key part of RVH's strategic plan. We've certainly heard from people about what's important to them. What do we do with it?
Well, patients and families are actually at the center of the RVH new strategic plan. The plan that we're proposing is actually rooted in a philosophy that we are calling My Care. It is actually the overarching entire focus of the plan. Through this patient-centered My Care philosophy, RVH has put a stake in the ground and said every patient has a right to expect the best possible experience in our health center. And that laser-like focus on our patients and their families will ensure we're not just meeting their needs, but we're actually exceeding their expectations. In My Care philosophy, patients and families will be partners in their care. They'll be involved in the planning and decision-making. So we'll listen very carefully to the patient and their family and certainly keep everyone informed about their condition, treatment, so that together we can make the best decisions. Suzanne, we all know that the healthcare system can be confusing. So we'll work hard to coordinate care for our patients and families both inside and outside our facility.
It can be confusing, and that's certainly one of the things that people talk to us about is make it easier, make it simpler for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we would want nothing less for our own loved ones. So what do you think? Please press *3 to ask a question and provide us with a comment if you have one. We do have another caller now. Kevin is calling in from Barrie. I believe he is a former patient, outpatient, and he has a question, I think, with outpatient services in the future. But Kevin, what would you like to say to us tonight? You're live with Janice.
Well, I think this is a really excellent opportunity for two-way feedback, and the reason why I wanted to participate tonight was specific. I was blessed to have top paramedic services bring me to the hospital with a severe trauma accident, and blessed to have 3.5 hours with 3 surgeons in the OR. But ironically, it turned out all of their hard work, where they thought I might die, thought I might not regain use of my arms, and thought that I might lose my right arm, that in the end, all that hard work was based on 185 days of outpatient physio. So my question was concerned with the awesome outpatient physio I got with up to 4 different therapists for a year. They told me that they're one of a minority of hospitals with outpatient physio. So my thoughts were, because I went on home care, I hope that we're going to keep our outpatient physio and promote it, that the province should understand we shouldn't be getting rid of them.
Thanks, Kevin. First of all, thank you very much for your positive comments for our surgeons and, of course, the lengthy time you were able to spend with our physiotherapists. We all know that in order to have successful outcomes for any age group, rehabilitation is actually a very key component. And unfortunately, you're correct that at times when, sometimes due to government funding or asking hospitals to focus, hospitals have focused more on a primary mandate on inpatient care. That is often with the expectation in large urban centers that physiotherapy on an outpatient basis could be picked up by outpatient services. However, sometimes those are private as well and not accessible as they are in a hospital setting where the public purse really is providing the funding for all of those services. So we now have had to focus very much on our patients who have been inpatients at RVH and then discharged and trying to continue to provide rehabilitation support on an outpatient basis. But we're not a full-service outpatient rehabilitation department for some of the reasons I'd previously given. But I really want to thank you for your encouragement to continue to support physiotherapy, and I'm really glad, of course, that we've made a difference in your life.
And hospitals are very different places than they were when you and I got into this industry, and our mandate's quite different now, isn't it?
Completely. And the government has really asked us to focus on being outstanding acute care facilities with phenomenal diagnostic services, inpatient services, surgical services as an example. And when you're really ill with a chronic disease and you need to be in an inpatient unit, we're here for you as well. But there's been an emphasis in the last few years of really focusing outpatient services back into the community. So we're trying to stay true to our mandate and ensure that the patients who are discharged from our facility in need of rehabilitation, like physiotherapy, can receive the service.
I'd like to do a poll question at this time and talk about some of those themes that Janice mentioned earlier about what was important to patients. This is going to give us some real-time feedback from you callers who are on the line right now. So when you or a family member needs care, what is the most important thing to you personally? So I'm going to run down a list of a few options and then tell you what numbers to key in. But this will just give you an example of some of the things that may be important to you. So, for instance, is it getting clear information and answers to your questions? Maybe it's getting the care you need quickly, feeling that your caregiver is compassionate and understanding, feeling your needs are respected and at the center of your care, or is it having seamless transitions of care throughout the healthcare system? So I'm going to read those back along with a number to key in. So if getting clear information and answers to your questions is the most important element of your care, press 1. Press 2 if it's getting the care you need quickly. Press 3 if it's feeling that your caregiver is compassionate and understanding. Or maybe it's feeling your needs are respected and at the center of your care, in which case press 4. Or press 5 if it's having seamless transitions of care through the healthcare system. So when you and your family member need care, what is the most important? And we'll be able to see that response in real time, and I look forward to hearing from you. So we do have another caller on the line. We have Helen, who is also calling from Barrie. Helen, I understand that you have a question around the size of the hospital and how we can help you get from place to place. We have doubled in size. You're right, it's a very big place. What's your question?
Well, when a person has a disability and are unable to walk a fair distance, previously my husband used to be able to push me around in the wheelchair and take me to where I had to go for testing and things. But now his health is bad and I can't get him to do that anymore. And I'm wondering, when I go into the hospital for testing and I go in the main entrance and then I have to go all the way down to the old outpatient entrance, right, down to that area, and it's impossible for me to do that on my own. Is there a provision that someone from the volunteer staff would wheel me down to where I have to go?
Good evening, Helen. Thanks very much for your question. I must say that as I walk through our expanded facility, which is now 1 million square feet, so you're not exaggerating the concern, I usually meet someone along the way who's either fairly fatigued or actually have lost their way. So I'd like to try to address your question from a couple of different perspectives. First of all, we do have greeters, volunteer greeters, at all of our main entrances. And in addition to being greeters, they are also our volunteer porters in the hospital. We've added a new staff group this year called logistics attendants. So the volunteer porters work with the logistics attendants to make sure we can move people through the organization. But if you're entering the building, and in addition to our great volunteers, all 850 of them, being able to provide directions, if you need assistance, you just need to ask. I think the other element that we should be introducing is that if you know ahead of time you're going to need assistance when you're arriving at our organization, you should be able to call the department that you're going to and flag that for them so that, in fact, we can be ready and waiting for you to help you get to the department that you're going to. Finally, we're still under renovation. Sometimes we think because the new building opened that perhaps we had completed the expansion last May, but in fact there's significant renovations undergoing right now. And therefore, some of the routes that we need to take today are even more complex than they will be when we actually have the full expansion completed sometime early this fall. So we do ask for the public's patience as we move through the changes that are being made, hopefully well signed, and just the overall size that we could have both volunteer porters or logistics attendants help you out. But really, Helen, I'd encourage you to call ahead, and we should be able to meet that need.
It's hard to believe that almost exactly a year ago, in fact, a year ago Thursday, we were standing in an atrium that was standing room only, opening the new expansion.
I remember Minister Deb Matthews said, the streets of Barrie must be empty because everyone is here for the expansion opening. It was just so exciting.
It was a remarkable day, but what's even more remarkable to me is how smoothly and seamlessly we've transitioned into that expansion.
So many people have worked diligently to ensure that all of these areas can be opened. We have a new cardiac care intensive unit, as well as a cardiac renal inpatient unit, a respiratory unit. The Emerge is open. We've added an Emerge extended care unit in there as well. And of course, ultimately, for so many people throughout the region, being able to receive cancer care close to home at the Simcoe Muskoka Regional Cancer Center.
And one of the things we talked about was our ability, once we opened the expansion, to provide care more quickly for people. I'm just taking a look at our poll questions, Janice, and this was asking people, what's the most important thing to you when you consider your care? Over 40% of the respondents are saying getting the care you need quickly. And that is sometimes a challenge. We know that the demand on our health services are unprecedented, particularly given the explosive growth in our region. But wait times is certainly something that we're working on, isn't it?
Absolutely. And maybe I could just comment, Suzanne, on our emergency wait times to begin with. For example, just so the callers know that we actually have one of the busiest emergency departments in Ontario. Every day on a 24-hour period, about 210 people come through the Emerge department. All patients, of course, are triaged upon arrival, and even if you're waiting longer, that person with the most serious condition will be seen first. We have two ways of tracking our wait times. One would be that the complex conditions. So now about 9 out of 10 patients with a complex condition presenting the Emerge wait about 5.4 hours, and that's just about on par with the provincial average. If their patients are coming through for a more minor condition, again, 9 out of 10 patients will wait a little over 3 hours, and again, that's just a little bit longer than the provincial average. Other wait times that we track very carefully include MRI, knee replacements, and hip replacements. And it is important to know that since the opening, we have seen a reduction in the wait time for MRI. For example, it's 26 days at RVH, and on average in the province, it's 60 days. CT scans, 33 days at RVH, whereas the provincial average is 27 days, but that is down as well. And a hip replacement, 134 days. At the provincial average, it's 197. In fact, in every single one of the categories, and of course breast surgery, down to 29 days for a wait versus the provincial average of 33. So the expansion has had a phenomenal impact on how long people have to wait to receive care, whether it be diagnostic or intervention at RVH.
Of course, we always say when you're a patient, any wait is too long, isn't it, though?
Absolutely.
When you're on that side of the fence. One of the other benefits, of course, from the expansion is really the opportunity to provide those specialized services. You mentioned a few of them. Respiratory unit is the only one in the region. Cardiac unit is the only one in the region. And when we opened the cardiac unit, it really did give us, it was the first step to bringing advanced cardiac care to our community. We have a caller on the line now, Bob from Barrie. He recently had an experience with cardiac care in our region. Bob, you're live on the line now. Tell us a little bit about your experience.
Yes, good evening. Thank you for taking my call. I was admitted to RVH a year ago last month for a heart attack, and when it was discovered that I needed advanced cardiac care, I was taken to Newmarket, and I was just curious to know how soon RVH may be able to offer such services.
Hi, Bob. Thanks very much for calling in. Royal Vic is working very diligently to bring advanced cardiac services much closer to home. We're working closely with our LHIN, with our government, and of course the South Lake Regional Health Center as our partner and mentor hospital. Recently, the North Simcoe-Muskoka LHIN endorsed RVH to have a highly specialized program to include cardiac diagnostics and interventions, such as catheterization and PCI, which is commonly known as coronary angioplasty. So right now, you might be aware that we are actually the only local health integration network in the province without these advanced cardiac services within our boundaries. So as a result of that, not only you, but 3,000 patients from throughout the region traveled to South Lake in Newmarket for advanced cardiac services this year. And with the development of our program, we'd be able to ensure that the North Simcoe-Muskoka residents who suffered a heart attack will have access to treatment which must be received within 90 minutes of the heart attack. So having it here at RVH will make the access point for residents throughout the LHIN just so much better. We are working on it. It's interesting to note that in our strategic plan back in 2005, we did identify the need for advanced cardiac services, and we wanted to make sure that we had, in fact, included space in our current expansion right next to our new intensive coronary care unit. So we now have the space available. Our foundation is busily working at a heart and mind campaign to make sure that we can, in fact, invest in the significant equipment that we required. And with the blessing of the LHIN and in partnership with South Lake, we feel that we're going to be receiving government approval, we hope, in the very near future. And then there'll be a retrofit to the space, obviously training and cardiologists to recruit. But in total, we can imagine being there within the next year and a half.
It's very exciting when you look at advanced cardiac, and you spoke earlier about child and youth mental health inpatient care. So there's still some work to be done that we're moving forward on.
Absolutely, but it's a great partnership with South Lake. Government seems quite aligned. Foundation, of course, our community continues to be so very generous to the needs that we identify. I've always said to the staff and the physicians, if we just provide great care, this is a community that supports its hospital.
And those are the kinds of services that really will be bringing people in from throughout our region. Those are highly specialized services. I know that people throughout the region, whether you're from Collingwood or whether you're from Bracebridge or Orillia, you count on us for those specialized services. So we do have a caller on the line right now, actually from Bracebridge. And Dan, you had a question for Janice with regards to some of those regional services.
Yes, it's Dan up in Bracebridge. My question is that as I see things evolving here, RVH is going to be our regional go-to hospital for the smaller hospitals and for people that live remote from it. And you've already mentioned the Muskoka Regional Cancer Center that you are. The concern is transportation is one of the concerns, and that is, and it really evolves into pretty much all of it, is whether it's chemo or the fracture clinic or an MRI, the smaller hospitals are going to be feeding into RVH. And how is it that RVH is going to respond to this? Because we have a problem in Muskoka where our ambulances get tied up down there, and so then they can't be there because we don't have enough ambulances to deal with the calls. And as you become our regional cancer center, and I think 50% of our people now go to RVH for their cancer treatment. Here we have a problem where statistically they're looking at history, where Sudbury was our regional cancer clinic, so they're trying to move our chemo center to Huntsville and take it out of central Muskoka that deals with Bracebridge, Gravenhurst, Bala, Port Carling, and all of those communities, which is 3/4 of the population. So how is RVH going to deal with this transportation and the evolution that's happening at such a quick pace as all of your new systems come online?
Dan, thanks very much for your question, and I'll try to break it down into a few parts. I'd like to start by just identifying that right now, almost over 45% of the patients that are seen at RVH are actually non-Barrie residents. So we have a significant portion of our work coming from outside of Barrie, and really that's why about a year ago we made a decision to be the Royal Victoria Regional Health Centre. we do want to and will continue to provide highly specialized services for residents from throughout the North Simcoe-Muskoka-LHIN. For example, 24% of our urgent surgeries performed at RVH were for non-Barrie residents. Even urgent orthopedic surgery, 34% were non-Barrie residents. And in just last year, in your area, Muskoka, we had 3,000 residents come to us. And we know they're coming here for specialized diagnostic imaging, such as interventional radiology or MRI scans, outpatient services and day surgeries, and of course, as you mentioned, the Simcoe-Muskoka Regional Cancer Center. We even had 300 Muskoka patients who actually received care in our emergency department. All of this is to say that Royal Victoria Regional Health Centre will only be as strong in the specialized areas as each hospital in the LHIN is in their area of service. So I won't comment specifically on the changes that are being adopted in the Bracebridge-Huntsville area. I will say, however, that Muskoka-Algonquin Health Centre is working closely with Cancer Care Ontario to ensure they can provide on an ongoing basis the specialized cancer treatment as close to home as possible, given, in fact, both quality and efficiency into account. Secondly, on the transportation end of things, and particularly as it relates to cancer patients, we're really proud to say that this year we opened up Rotary House. This is the lodge for cancer patients who have to travel for their treatment. And in fact, they have to be located greater than 40 kilometers away, which again, Dan, is right up your alley. Last year we hosted in our first year of operation, actually, we hosted 29 cancer patients from the Muskoka-Parry Sound area. This lodge is open Monday to Friday, and it's usually for patients who are receiving radiation treatment, although some chemotherapy patients do receive care and comfort here as well. So that's one of the areas that we'll be looking at in terms of transportation. Being a Sudbury person, I can say that coming from the Huntsville area down Highway 11 is much easier on patients and families than it is trying to get to Sudbury on a more convoluted route. So that would be the answer specifically to transportation. But this regional health center will only be as strong as every individual hospital is within its mandates within our region.
Thank you very much, Janice. One of the questions that we have now has to deal with really the service at the hospital and how we're working to improve the patient experience. Before we get to that, caller, just a reminder, if you have a question, we do have a number of callers, so I'm not sure that we're going to be able to get to everyone tonight. Thank you so much for calling in. But if you do have a question, please dial *3. If we don't get to your question, you will have an opportunity to leave a voicemail message at the end of the call. So at this point, I'm going to go to Jonathan, who is in Midhurst tonight. Jonathan, you have a question, and you are live on the line.
Great. I know of a case where a patient insisted they were basically healed and wanted to return home. And at the time, they were judged to be competent, so their autonomy was respected, and they were sent home. But as it turned out, they still required medical care and were eventually readmitted. So I'm wondering if there's an emphasis by RVH to essentially follow up with patients after they've been discharged, just to make sure they really are okay.
Jonathan, it's Janice, and thanks very much for your call and question. Certainly, now at RVH, we have implemented many elements of a philosophy that is to really be patient-centered. And one of them is that we are giving post-discharge phone calls to every patient who is discharged from our facility. The call is given from a health professional's perspective, so we can check in on whether or not the medication regime as prescribed is being followed, whether or not the follow-up medical appointments have been arranged, do they have the home support that they were anticipating upon discharge. And so it really has provided us an opportunity in real time to speak with a patient and or their family and discover that perhaps a trip to the family doctor may be necessary, or in fact we do need them back into the organization, into the hospital, so they can be cared for in an inpatient setting. This is just one of the examples of the changes that we're making at RVH over the last few years. If I could just take a moment maybe to focus on a few of the others. We want to make sure that our staff, and particularly our clinical staff at the unit level, are seeing patients hourly in their rooms and making sure they have everything they need for their care. In addition to that, the unit managers visit every patient every day on their units, And our senior team and directors also go out and meet patients in the organization. For example, my requirement is to meet 5 patients a week at RVH and have an interview or a discussion with them to see if there's something we can do to improve their care. Also, we have changed the way that shift change occurs in our organization. Now we actually have clinical staff who shift change at the bedside of the patient and family so that both the patient and, in cases appropriately, the family are involved in the care and in the care plan moving forward as we transfer the care from one staff to the next. Also, when staff are coming into the organization meeting a patient for the first time, we have a standardized approach to introduction so that the patient will know the first name of the staff member, and it goes up on a whiteboard at the patient's bedside. They'll also know a little bit about this staff's background, how long they've worked in the area, maybe where they went to school, and other things to just give the patient and family even more confidence in the care. Just recently, we've launched a patient survey on our bedside entertainment system. This allows for 3 or 4 simple questions a day that the unit manager can get a look at, and again, if there are any concerns or questions or compliments, we can actually deal with them in real time while the patient's still with us. We do have a whole quality improvement plan, and we've posted that on our website, and we encourage all of our listeners and those in the public to take a look at how focused we are in areas such as hand hygiene and reducing our C. difficile rates. So those are just some of the examples, Suzanne, of how we're trying to make sure that, as Jonathan gave us his example, if someone is home and there's a discharge phone call, then we can learn through the questions that we ask from a clinical perspective if it would be appropriate for the person to come back.
So it's a really deliberate focus on customer service, isn't it?
It is. It's a culture transformation for us to make sure that everyone who's caring for a patient and family has a very deliberate and very distinct way of addressing the patient, dealing with the care, how often they'll be seen. Patients should be able to count on us each and every time.
And I can't help but think that the outcomes would be more positive.
Absolutely. We do know that through the research we've done, when we have a very prescriptive approach to patient care, that quality outcomes are higher. And also we know that patient satisfaction goes up. And you know what? The patient staff satisfaction is higher as well, and physicians really can understand that no matter who's caring for the patient, there's going to be a certain approach that they can feel guaranteed.
Janice, we have some interesting results to our last poll question, and I'd like to try to get to one more. So for the callers out there, I'm going to give you a list of responses, and then I'll repeat them so you know which key to key in. But think about your healthcare providers for a moment. Think about some of the comments Janice had about what makes a great patient care experience. So when you think of those healthcare providers, consider the values that you want them to demonstrate and which quality is the most important. I know that there are many that are important, but what is the most important? Is it taking responsibility for their decisions, working as a team to partner with you as a patient or a family member, showing respect to everyone, that they're innovative, or that they're caring and compassionate? So if you think taking responsibility for their actions is the most important quality, press 1. Press 2 if you think it's working as a team to partner with you as a patient or family member. Press 3 if it's show respect to everyone. Press 4 if you really want them to be innovative. And press 5 if the most important element is that they are caring and compassionate. And we'll be able to see those results live on the screen. Janice, I want to talk about safety and quality a little bit more. That's been a big focus of RVH for many years, really the top priority, isn't it?
It is, Suzanne. Our new mission statement says it best. Safety is our promise. We're committed to providing the safest, highest quality care. And, you know, RVH, of course, already is an extremely safe hospital, but we want to set the bar even higher. We try to exceed all safety measures, and as I said, our new mission statement includes, safety is our promise. Clinical excellence also means continuing to develop specialized clinical services and to take advantage of RVH's expertise and technology so people throughout Simcoe Muskoka can receive the best care close to home. So we've already talked a little bit about the importance of advanced cardiac, of course, and child and youth inpatient mental health services as 2 specialized areas we're developing.
one of the challenges that we face, and there are many in healthcare, certainly we're in an uncertain economy. Hospitals are looking at a 0% increase this year for funding. We have a growing population. We also have a very high rate of seniors. And as a result, one of the challenges we face is alternative level of care. Sometimes people hear a lot about ALC, but can you explain a little bit about what that is and why that is affecting us at RVH?
Alternate level of care, or commonly known as ALC, are patients who have really been discharged from their acute phase of their illness, and they're really waiting to go elsewhere. Most of them, like 70%, are actually waiting to go to a long-term care setting. This is a really tough situation, and it frustrates everyone involved. Certainly, when we have at times up to 84 alternate level of care patients in our beds, which are meant to be for the acute care services, it means a number of things. One is that if a patient's presenting an emerge, but the emerge gets backed up because we can't get the inpatients into the inpatient beds, then our emerge gets into gridlock, and of course the wait times as people present in our emerge get longer and longer. When they're waiting for a long-term care bed, patients who are alternate level of care just don't require specialized care, and the cost that it comes from the hospital providing this care. So at times, we don't have enough care for the acute ill or injured people in the region. As a result, then, we have patients who are actually in the hallways, and no one should have to receive care in a hallway, particularly, Suzanne, when we've just opened up all of these new beds with our expansion. It's not a good environment for the patient, and it's also very distressing for our caregivers who want to do their very best. So really, we are an acute care facility, and we should have an average length of stay of between 3 to 5 days. So we have to find new methods to work toward our alternate level of care patients being discharged quickly and safely into a community setting. So we're working with our Community Care Access Center and other partners to develop the strategies that are going to assist us. This program is not unfamiliar to people. It's called Home First. So it means that we'll no longer be keeping patients in acute care beds while they wait for a placement. If we don't do this, very, very soon our hospital will be full of alternate level care patients. And when our region needs us most for an acute care episode of illness or injury, we won't be able to be there for them. We felt so strongly about this almost a year ago now that we made an investment in the IOF nursing home, and we have 26 interim beds there. So RVH alternate level care patients who should be discharged, 26 of them at least at any one time, can be in the IOF for an alternate level of care placement while they wait for their nursing home. So hallway patients it's a complex problem. It has an impact throughout the organization because we aren't flowing patients through, and people are waiting in the emerge too long, and patients are being cared for in hallways. So we want to make sure that we have patients who are actually being treated by the right healthcare professionals. So, for example, if we have a patient with a respiratory illness, we really would prefer that the patient be on the respiratory unit, even if that means, if all the beds are full, that the patient is cared for in the hallway. We know that this is not the ideal situation, but certainly it is the best we can do while we try to sort out how best to care for and discharge our alternate level of care patients.
One of the other challenges that many people throughout our region face is that they don't have a family doctor. And it's a problem. It's been that way for a while, but RVH is really working on a unique solution, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. I'm really shocked that even still 55,000 people from Barrie and area don't have access to a family doctor. So recognizing that primary care is really the center of the solution for how we can best use all of our limited healthcare dollars, we developed a very unique solution, and we built our own through the Family Medicine Teaching Unit. This is a partnership with the University of Toronto Medical School, and we provide now the 2 final years of training for medical residents just before they become family physicians. We began the program in 2009, and so far 8 residents have graduated from our program, and 5 have stayed in the area to establish practices, which is a great outcome. It's exactly what we wanted to see happen. Right now, another 8 residents are just about to graduate, and I'm pleased to say that 6 of those have plans to stay in the area. I think we all get a little excited when we hear they've bought a house and have a mortgage. It means they're here to stay for a while. The program also operates right in Rotary Place on the RVH campus. So each resident, and as of July we'll have had 21, manages their own caseload, about 300 patients. So there are actually 300 patients who previously wouldn't have had access to a family doctor now do. It's also really important to note that, particularly in light of a recent accreditation process, that we can say we're the #1 program of choice in all of U of T location offerings. This program is very successfully led under Dr. Stuart Murdoch, and he has a very dedicated group of family practitioners who teach in the program. But I also have to comment that our specialists throughout the organization, whether it be in surgery or diagnostic imaging or internal medicine, are all really excited about sharing their knowledge and expertise. And so our students feel very welcomed here. And it's the whole team coming together, along with the purpose-built building in Rotary Place, that has made this the #1 program in Canada.
So we've done so well with the Family Medicine Teaching Unit. Is this going to be something that we'll be pursuing in the future? Will it be a priority through the strategic plan?
Absolutely. In addition to the Family Medicine Teaching Unit being a solution to the lack of access to primary care for our region, we also saw it as an important seedling for, I guess, a decision or an analysis of whether or not we could move into that space of medical education in a big way. We've had such tremendous success that in our new strategic plan, there's actually a direction around teaching and research. And we're really going to take some time to understand what would be the next level of medical education that we should be offering at RVH. Once again, it does two things. It helps us to recruit and to retain medical experts into the future, but it also keeps us all sharp on our toes because we have residents with us in a specialty area. Everyone rallies around that resident and ensures they have an outstanding experience. So it is win-win, and our new strategic plan will really focus on that.
Is it just me, or are they graduating these medical residents much younger than they used to?
Suzanne, I'm sure they've just purchased those degrees. They couldn't possibly. We can't be getting older. They must have just done a different process than when we were in university.
It must be. I'm just looking at our poll questions. Really interesting response to this one. And you remember that the question was, when you think of our caregivers, what are the most important values that you want them to demonstrate? And we have a little bit of a statistical tie here. The #1 value that people appreciate is that their caregivers are caring and compassionate. And the other one is really working as a team to partner with you. And those are very specific words, partner, isn't it? It's not by chance. It's very deliberate.
Absolutely, and that's why in our strategic plan we're really focusing on My Care, which is a philosophy that places the patient at the center of everything we do. And, of course, you'd think, being an organization that provides health care, that would be an obvious. And it is at one level, but when we say really putting the patient at the center of everything we do, it is an overarching strategy for us. We put the stake in the ground, and we've said that every patient has a right to expect the best possible experience in our health center. And we know with that laser-like focus on patients and families, we're not only going to meet their expectations, but we're going to exceed them. And when we say partners in care, it really begins before the patient comes to our organization, which we will know will ensure a smoother transition into RVH. It's, of course, while they're here being a part of that care plan, if they want, driving that care plan. And then equally important, when it's time for discharge, we've really worked with the patient and family to ensure a smooth discharge into the community or the other setting. So we have to make sure we're listening carefully and keeping the patient and the family at the center and part of the decision-making process. But, we want to go one step further. We really want to see our patients, whether they be current or discharged patients, becoming part of our decision-making process. Maybe they'll be sitting at the Capital Equipment Selection Committee. Maybe they'll be reviewing our policies before we finalize them. Maybe they'll be helping to hire staff. So we really want to see patients being a very big part of our organization moving forward, obviously in their care, but in a more peripheral way as well. Old school, sometimes we felt that we knew best, and we would just provide the care and tell patients what we need. But clearly from the feedback you receive from patients, they want communication. They want to be involved. They really do want to be partners. Absolutely, and we're going to make sure that patients have all the choices they would like to make. There will be some patients who still would rather passively be a participant in their care, but there will be many who want to be part of the decision-making. They've all been through Google search to make sure they understand their disease and their Dr. Google, their treatment, and we have to have patience and focus on going through this process with them so they can make sure that at the end of the day they felt a very big part of this care plan.
Part of our success as an organization is ensuring that we are financially responsible, and certainly that's something that we take very seriously. Tell us a little bit about where we stand financially. There are lots of stories in the news in other communities where they're having a very difficult time. Of course, we have a very uncertain economic situation right now, and hospitals are more and more being responsible for finding revenue. So tell us a little bit about our budget. How did we do at the end of the fiscal year?
Thanks, Suzanne. We are in a balanced position as a result of the fiscal year that just ended in March 31st, 2013. And this has been due to an awful lot of hard work by many to ensure that we're making very best use of our resources. And in order to do that, I must say it's been a little bit easier on us because of our expansion. This year alone, in addition to the operating dollars that are transferred from the Ministry of Health provincial government, we received an additional $19 million in this fiscal year. And related to the project and all the expansion that has taken place and the 600 people that we've hired, we've received a total of $40 million in additional operating funds. So there's no doubt, as we're just moving into the expansion and ramping up and transitioning, that this would be a year that would be a little less challenging for us to balance, because most places in the province, you're right, hospitals are really struggling. And I always say to everyone, use this resource wisely. Let's be really efficient, because our time will come when the revenue we received will not keep pace with the costs that are continuing to go up. So that's number one. Two is, though, that government has asked us to become a little less dependent on transfer payments or government payments in order to operate the facility.
Well, that's a perfect segue. In fact, we have a caller actually who is calling in to talk a little bit about parking rates. And as you said, government is expecting hospitals to seek out new revenue opportunities. And we have Janice on the line. Janice, you're talking with Janice. And the Janice on the line would like to talk to you about parking rates.
Hello, yes. I'm just wondering whether I'm taking a loved one to the hospital for a simple test, whether I'm there to visit and celebrate the birth of somebody's baby, or whether I'm scrambling to get somebody into the ER. We always have to pay for parking now, and I'm just wondering what you say to people. I think it used to be run by the hospital, but now it's a private company or something. So.
Hi, Jen. Okay. Sorry, was that your question then?
Yes. Can you talk a little bit about parking and why we have to pay?
Absolutely. I can't imagine a conversation where parking wouldn't come up. It's one of the hottest topics, really, in the industry. And I was just getting into some of the strategies the Ministry of Health has asked hospitals to get into to be less dependent on transfer payments from the province, and that is to try and generate revenue from many different sources. So not only are hospitals encouraged, but in fact we're expected to develop and ways to generate revenue on our own. And as with our hospital and so many throughout the province, parking revenues do go directly to patient care. At RVH on an annual basis, still today, we net nearly $3 million towards our bottom line. And there are, so of course, costs, as you mentioned. There are also other costs in maintaining the lot, snow removal, safety monitoring. But we do need those funds, because we do not receive sufficient funds to keep up with all of our costs as an organization. As I said, that's pretty standard in the province. For example, maybe people don't realize that any equipment that we purchase or any equipment that needs replacing, it's actually a hospital's responsibility to pay 100% of the cost of the equipment. So in this Phase 1 expansion that we just opened, Janice, we actually purchased $70 million in the state-of-art equipment. And it's state-of-the-art today, but as Suzanne mentioned earlier, it's already a year old, and equipment, particularly in the medical clinical side, lasts about 5 to 7 years. So we have to spend about $3.5 million annually on new equipment, and parking revenue is our major source of funding. As I mentioned, we do net $3 million annually. just to put that in context as well, a new MRI machine in diagnostic imaging is about $3 million, the same amount we earned on parking last year. We also did listen to the public that they wanted to have equitable and fair rates. For example, the community asked for shorter stay options, so we implemented hourly rates. We also have an economic weekly or monthly pass, and the passes are $35 for the week or $90 for the month. And I'm not saying that that's not significant funds, but we've tried to put as many mechanisms in place so if you're here frequently visiting someone, you're not paying the rate that would be identified for those who are coming in less frequently. You're right, the daily rate is $15, or you can have an in and out pass for $19, meaning not every time you exit do you have to pay the $15. All of these passes, by the way, can be purchased at the parking office, in the visitor lot, or any pay station in the health center itself or at Rotary Place. I also want to make sure that callers know that our staff and physicians pay $40 a month for parking, and of course, our very dear volunteers park for free. So we know parking is a challenge. Not only is it a challenge financially, but there are times when people come into the lot and it's quite full. So I wanted the callers to know that we also use Georgian College on their off season for parking. We ask our staff to park there, and our senior staff and other staff are actually parking down the street on the other side of Quarry Ridge. By Christmas, though, we'll have an additional 250 new parking spaces. That's when we'll get our lot back. We currently have the trailers for the builders. So we're trying to put things in place to make it as reasonable as possible.
And Janice, you mentioned our volunteers, and I don't think it would be right for us to go through this entire call without a huge shout-out to our volunteers and to our auxiliary.
Absolutely. Always say close to 1,000 volunteers or blue coats, part of the Blue Brigade, that provide phenomenal volunteer work at our organization every year. So they're here in about 90-plus departments. But in addition to that, when we had our Phase 1 expansion fundraising campaign, they were the first to the table for a $5 million pledge, and they thought over 5 years, but I guess they surprised none of us by 3 years later, giving us a check for $5 million. And then shortly after that, they stepped up to the plate for a $1.5 million commitment for cardiac care equipment. And really, they're well on their way with 3/4 of that in the bank already. So it's a phenomenal group. They're really bright business people who know how to raise money, sometimes just the simplest ways. Very successful Cafe Royale in our main lobby, Victoria's Gift Shop, penny sales, anything you can think of, they're doing it. So they're here in many ways, both as fundraisers, but equally important, every hour they give, we simply couldn't run the place without them.
No, and we often ask that, what would we do without our volunteers? They are invaluable. Unfortunately, our time tonight is drawing to a close. It's gone very quickly. I can't believe an hour is almost finished. If you didn't have time to ask your question, and I see there are still a couple on the line, please stay on the line, and a recording will tell you how you can leave a message. We'll answer every single voicemail that we get, and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. I think the feedback tonight was terrific.
It really was, Suzanne. It'll add to many areas. For example, the strategic plan itself, we now add the voices of tonight's callers and listeners to the 3,000 who've given us input, so that we know we can provide an even better patient experience at RVH. I also think, though, it's important to give me this opportunity to thank Team RVH. These are all the staff and the physicians and the volunteers, everyone who gives so much each and every day to care for our patients. We're so blessed to have highly skilled, compassionate, dedicated people. And, you know, there's one of our vice presidents who says, magic happens at RVH every day, and it's so true. Really, our people are our most valuable resource. Finally, of course, engagement. I want to thank everyone on the line, particularly those who ask questions, to be part of tonight's discussion, so that you can really, we know that you're thinking deeply about the future of healthcare in our region. And you know what? I hope you know that we are too. Your input is critical, and we always welcome your feedback. So thanks for taking the time to talk with us.
We'll have to do this again. So even though we are ending this telephone town hall, you can still leave a message at the end of the call. And the audio file and the transcript of tonight's conversation will be posted on RVH's website in the days ahead, as will our entire strategic plan next month. So thank you again for sharing part of your evening with us, and enjoy the rest of your night.